Stanley Parable Deluxe Edition. AKA it's technically Stanley Parable 2. How they like to make a joke about there's no deluxe edition. Delition. Or let me say delition. Anyways.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. Stanley lifted the bucket into his arms, and a wave of comfort rushed over him.
Oh, you know, they have... It's just the save file.
Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
There will be a reward for you to climb. Mission. Okay, the mission step. Inside a large room. Something to do with the stairs. Some are both red and blue. Fireplace. Violet but smelly place. Far I need to do.
Stanley, we must move on from this broom closet, simply because I have no remaining stickers. Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Okay, I'm going back to the name of these little Stanley figurines, and now I'm torn between Stanlerines and Figlies. What do you think, Stanley? What name better encapsulates the intrinsic sense of happiness that you get from seeing a small number in the corner of your screen go up by 1? Let me sit on it. I'm sure it will come to me. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire, if not for the soothing presence. But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
Everything, which I will at some point. In due time, I still have to go through.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket would both meet a violent death.
Or chuck the bucket.
The door behind them was not shut. Stanley and the bucket still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track. At this point, Stanley and the bucket were knowingly walking forward into a very painful death for each of them.
Whee! Ba, ba, ba. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley and the bucket inched closer to their demise, Stanley reflected on how meaningless the bucket be. To be sure, it puts the mind and the soul at ease to embrace the bucket, but what use is a sense of ease when you're about to be crushed to death? This is what Stanley thought to himself, and he sort of kicked himself for wasting so much time carrying a bucket everywhere. Farewell, Stanley.
"Farewell, Stanley," cried the narrator, as Stanley and the bucket were led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, the bucket's life came to an end, as it was crushed violently to death.
What's that room? You know, it's...
It was a shame, the death of such a magnificent bucket. It's true that all buckets are radiant in their own way, but this one stood above the rest. It was a glorious bucket to behold.
I screenshot just for my own satisfaction.
Can you see how arrogant it was for Stanley to take a bucket like this and to claim it for his own? Can you see the hubris that blinded him? Can you see that the bucket is far more noble than Stanley will ever be in his short life?
I can't read what's on top of there. And I can't even jump. I'm gonna try to edit as much as possible. Or try to get a good thing. This is 25 buckets. That is more than 25 buckets. You can easily count 10 just about here. Then another 10. Then easily 5 is more. Probably 25 special ones. According to story lore. Up. There we go. Get my story. Oh, those shit bucket. Every... I'm just screenshotting these. I'm gonna send these to my YouTube. Make sure to YouTube if possible. Wait. Okay, that makes... There we go. One of those I'm gonna delete. I just had to fix it.
No man can own a bucket, and certainly not a bucket as dazzling to behold as this one. It is man who should kneel before the bucket.
Because I can't. I could easily join the game again. I grabbed the
But
bucket.
there is something we can do. Something we can do together, you and I, that will right this terrible wrong. Let Stanley die. Let him be crushed by the machine. Don't reset the game. Don't give him another opportunity to run off with another beautiful bucket. We can save the world's buckets from their treatment as tools and implements if only we let Stanley die together. The bucket shall take its place as ruler, as leader, as commander of a new world, a new vision.
I love killing the main character so much. This character dies more times than any other person in any other game I know.
The confusion and the chaos all seemed to melt away as Stanley embraced the bucket. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his... This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Was this better than the meeting room? Yes, Stanley thought to himself. Yes, perhaps it truly was. No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
No,
said the bucket.
don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Go there. Go to the cargo.
But Stanley feared that any path he walked might lead to the separation of himself and the bucket, his dearest friend. So he threw himself to his death, that they might die in one another's arms. How deeply touching.
It's always going to be the same. I wonder what
Just a step through this door, Stanley thought to himself, that's all I need. If I can make it through this door, I can make it through them all.
Oh, I need a bucket.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. The lounge was sublime, a work of art. What was it about this room that called so deeply and so personally to Stanley? Its grace? Its subtle charm? No. Stanley knew it was something deeper, something darker. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left. Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago. Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. Please, stop trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for her. This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life. But in his eagerness to prove that he is in control of the story and no one gets to tell him what to do, Stanley leapt from the platform and plunged to his death. Good job, Stanley. Everyone thinks you are very powerful.
I imagine dealing with a narration your entire life. You would, one of the many ways you would die is just jump off into your death.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps warmth spread through Stanley's arms. With the bucket in his arms again, he was home. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the... This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
No,
said the bucket.
don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Go there. Go to the cargo lift.
I'm gonna try that.
You're getting close now, Stanley. You've nearly gotten all of the Figler and Marines. Very soon, you'll collect the last one, and then the first number will equal the second number, and that will be it. We'll be different people by
one
then.
more. I just
Different in the
realized,
sense
yeah.
that we used to have none of them, and now we have them all. You can't go back to when you had no Figler and Marines. None of us can.
I'm gonna go back to the... I don't think I can get up there, so I'm just gonna take the vent way, and I wonder what the hell is happening from there. Nah. Oh, this is a special area. Aw, computer printer. That's a lot of tapes. Oh. Hidden lore, yay. Oh, that...
Okay, this is day number 295, tape number... I don't even know. I've lost track. Nothing feels real anymore. The longer I study this bucket, the less sense anything makes. The sheer euphoria I feel every time I pick it up. No matter how many times I've done it, it's always the same feeling. And the emptiness in my chest when I set it down. It doesn't make sense. There's no explanation for it. I still haven't figured out why I see the world so differently when this bucket is in my arms. Why everything feels so... What do I do with this treasure? I can monetize it. Yes. It's unthinkable the amounts of money people will pay for even just an hour with the bucket. This is my golden ticket. But I have to be careful, because as soon as this gets out, there's going to be a target on my back. Even now, I don't know who might be trying to get me. What's that? Who's there?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Probably a Stanley, but I'm going... Screw it.
Stanley picked up the bucket and smiled. He'd never be alone again, not truly alone, not with the bucket around. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his... This was not the correct way to the meeting room.
I'm gonna keep
But
on
Stanley
going
had
this way
felt
just
the
for
bucket
fun.
calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Was this better than the meeting room? Yes, Stanley thought to himself. Yes, perhaps it truly was. How insightful the bucket turned out to be. No, never mind. The bucket was wrong.
I could begin the whole game again, but nah. On, check something. Go to Game Hub. Wait, it says 12 tunes. Play first one. Beat that. You can't jump.